My name is Kristen York, and I am Director of Business Innovation for Sierra Business Council. And welcome to Cultivating Innovation and Expanding Impact. So just a few little notes is that I asked to remind you that if you have burning issues for the town hall tomorrow, write them down, and you can write them on our board right outside. There's a big poster, because at SBC, in our infinite wisdom, in our little bubble that we live in, we came up with what we thought were really compelling, interesting topics, and turns out there's other things you guys want to talk about rather than what we want to talk about. So let us know what it is and write it on the wall. We have a group that's been trained as facilitators, so we'll be happy to do that. So anyway, really lucky today to be joined on the stage today by my co-moderator, Richard Idland from American Sustainable Business Council, and Don Whitaker from Ceronics. He's one of the guys, whenever you pick up the phone, they say you should smile. This guy's got this ear-to-ear grin. We have Alyssa Loffman from Patagonia, the poster child of sustainable business. Patagonia, not Alyssa. And Janine Windhausen from Placer County is going to talk about PACE, which is Property Assessed Clean Energy Bonds, or a program. They're each going to take about 5 minutes to introduce themselves and their programs, and then we will break into some guided questions. And we want to keep this as informal as possible and as interactive, so if you have questions that are on track, please raise your hand and we will get those in. There's no need to wait, okay? So, with that, innovation, right? We've talked a lot about innovation. What comes to mind when we say innovation? Like clickers that work, that's what comes to mind. What comes to mind? Technology, broadband, maybe a particular business. Okay, so what did Henry Ford say about innovation? If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? Okay, so Henry Ford was an innovator, clearly an innovator. And Henry Ford knew that innovation, it was about change, right? And transformation, and breaking old models and paradigms. And sometimes revolutions, and sometimes it's really scary. Last night, Terry Tempest Williams shared with me, she was on a plane with some C-suite executive from Procter & Gamble, and his title had innovation in it. She said, what does that mean? I need to know what innovation means. And he says, well, right now it means a foot on the back. Because innovation for him is about driving change in an organization that really nobody wanted to do. So sometimes it's hard. We think about innovation in the Sierra, and this was, Linda's kind of took a lot of my points, so I'm going to cut to the chase. But we really need to think about our natural resources, right? It's what we have, and it's what we need to innovate with. And more importantly, it's about communicating how important those natural resources are to others, because not everybody gets it. So let's take water. Clearly one of our most undervalued assets, right? And it's undervalued not in just the rates we pay, do not begin to pay for the ecosystem services, but they also don't begin to cover the cost to return it to a clean state. And our forests are worth more dead than alive. And that's just a fact. Our forests do not come with a cost for their ecosystem services. So in our current economic system, nature is basically a business that we are liquidating, right? We are extracting assets from the earth and selling them for profit. Some renewable and some not. But this way of doing business, it forces investment in areas that are defining our future. So this panel is about how to change those forms of investment, how to change the way you're thinking about business. All of these people here are leaders in that field. So I'm going to bring it back to Sierra because I'm a city girl who moved to the mountains, and I find nature very, very, very inspiring. As it turns out, I think that nature and our natural systems are very good, they're very good analogies for how to run a sustainable business. So, efficient, right? Running a business, be more careful with your resources, leaning out your business so that you will have more economic profit. Resilience, building resilience into your business so that you're better prepared for natural disasters, dealing with complex regulatory challenges, being prepared for water shortages and price spikes, right, for power and natural resources. Low impact products. We're definitely hearing from that from Patagonia. So when you think about your product, thinking about the least impact you can have in your product, your service, your packaging, and then driving that all the way through your supply chain. And then this notion of consciousness. So embedding in your DNA of your company, so a conscious culture. So you're really not just thinking about your next quarterly results, you're thinking about the long term. So when we think about innovation, what I think about is it's putting creativity into action. Because if we really look at our businesses and lead them from here, lead them from the heart, that creates a sustainable business with more economic impact, more environmental and social responsibility. So, unfortunately, businesses have a tough time doing it alone, which is where Richard Idler comes in, our policymakers. We also need innovative policymakers and legislation.
Okay, ready. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be here. So let me tell you briefly about the American Sustainable Business Council. We're a public policy organization that represents businesses and business organizations in Washington and state capitals across the country and make the business case for what we consider to be a sustainable economy. Patagonia is one of our members. We're very happy that they're active, and the Sierra Business Council is also a member. So what we do is we aggregate the voice of enlightened, triple bottom line, sustainably oriented companies to make the case that a sustainable economy works, and that the values and priorities and principles by which companies like Patagonia operate, or Eileen Fisher, or Dansko, or Seventh Generation, or Ben & Jerry's, or Stonyfield, these are all very viable business practices that yield profitable results. And they also yield healthy products. And that what we want to do is get the policies and the regulations right, so that good behavior, environmental stewardship, responsible workplace practices are actually encouraged and not discouraged. And so we spend a lot of our time thinking about what kinds of policies could be adopted and looking at the political process. So we're not a partisan group, but we work in politics. And so we have a C3 and we have a C4, a 501c4, which allows us to advocate on behalf of particular policies. And one of our sayings is that it's better to be at the table than on the menu. And we say that because we know that who shows up in Washington or in Sacramento really influences the outcome of what these policies and regulations that guide the economy end up looking like. And that if progressive companies, if triple bottom line companies, if companies that subscribe to full cost accounting, to transparency, if those kinds of companies don't show up, then the rules get written by others who may not share our values. So our work is in making the business case for transparency. And just a few quick examples that are probably relevant to you here in this part of the country. We've been working a lot on fracking here in California, as well as in Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, and a few other states around the country. And we have a point of view that suggests that we don't really know what's going on with hydraulic fracking. We know that it uses tremendous water. There are all kinds of externalities and hidden costs associated with fracking. And we make the case to policymakers at the federal and state level that more scrutiny and more scientific evidence needs to be available before we wholesale endorse something like fracking. On GMO labeling, genetically modified organisms, we call out the lack of certainty as to what impact GMOs have and make a business case for transparency. We do a lot of work on climate change and climate and water as well. And in both of those issues, we can go back to Kristen's point about innovation. And we're all about innovation, and the companies we work with are the most innovative companies in the economy. They're the ones who are thinking of new products that will have a positive impact on the consumers, on public health, on the environment, and they're really adding value. But we know in the policy process, whether it's with clean water or clean air, that there are very many entrenched interests that really are opposed to innovation. And that regulation can either inhibit innovation or it could foster innovation. And I'll give you one quick example and then turn it over. We've been working for a number of years on the reform of the Toxic Substances Control Act, which some of you may know was passed in 1974. Good idea then, but woefully inadequate to deal with the 35,000 persistent chemicals that are in our environment. So we've been working with a number of companies, Method, Seventh Generation, and Naturepedic, among them, who say that the EPA has jurisdiction over regulating more of these chemicals. We need to know what's in these chemicals. And the chemical industry has repeatedly said, these are trade secrets. No one needs to know. We're quite able to police ourselves, thank you. So I'm skeptical of that. But what we know also is that a change in regulation, a change in policy can actually foster new innovative products if there's a level playing field. So one of the arguments we make in Washington, D.C. all the time is that smart regulation, smart policy can foster new products, can foster innovation, can lead to new discoveries. And regulations, they're not neutral. They can, again, inhibit progress, or they can propel it forward. And I'll leave it there, and we can circle back to that topic later. Okay, great. Moving to...
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I have a lapel mic on here.
Yes.
I wonder, okay. Should have checked with you on how this works. I think I'm going to get it, though. No, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. So I want to talk to you today about PACE. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. There are a lot of components to PACE. They're highly technical. There's where the capital comes from, the financial structure, how it works for a property owner, metrics around greenhouse gas emissions and energy savings. So I'm going to do a real quick run through, and then hopefully during the question and answers we'll drill down in the areas that you're most interested in. So PACE is a financing tool that allows property owners to make energy efficiency improvements to their property and also allows them to install renewable generation, and that financing is repaid on their property tax bill. So the installments are added annually to the property tax bill. The program's goals are they're economic, they're environmental, and they're also social. So can everybody see this okay back there? Should I go through them? Increase job creation, increase investment in the local economy, and maximize the multiplier effect. There is a high multiplier effect with PACE because of the savings that property owners realize in the energy efficiency and the reduction of their energy bills. Increase energy and water efficiency and increase conservation. Increase energy independence, assist, at this point, commercial property owners or non-residential, and maybe at some point even residential property owners with increasing regulatory compliance, and then also to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So PACE is not unique to Placer County or to California. There are 31 states in the District of Columbia that have PACE authorizing legislation. And many states have programs either in development or active. By far and away, California has the most active. There is a very active program in Southern California, one in Sonoma County, and other developing programs across the state. All types of properties are eligible, as I mentioned before. And in fact, as Steve has already mentioned, Grand Lebacan is an example of a commercial property. And we are financing the replacement of boilers, some of the heating and air conditioning system, putting smart control systems for the building mechanics, and also what's called an IntelliHood. Right now, when the cooks come in the kitchen in the morning, they turn on the vent over the stove and it stays on all day. This hood senses the amount of smoke and humidity and activates automatically based on the smoke and humidity levels, and therefore increases efficiency. So that's just an example. We have also financed office buildings, a wholesale plant nursery, a hotel, and I'm going to give an example later of a RV park. The types of things that are included are also include water conservation. So things like smart controllers for irrigation systems so they don't come on when it's raining. Here in the High Sierra region, we finance warm roofs. Cool roofs are we finance down in the more towards the valley in the Roseville and Rockland areas. Attic insulation. Far and away, we have the highest participation for solar systems, and people can finance multiple improvements at one time, just like I indicated with Grand Lebacan. And residential property owners frequently finance multiple improvements. So the public benefits are economic development. The American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy estimates that for every $1 million in financing, that 20 jobs are created, and they have a methodology that also shows that multiplier effect that comes from the savings from the energy efficiency and those dollars being reinvested by increasing profit margins and increasing disposable income for residential property owners. It also improves cash flow, obviously, if you're paying less every month for your utilities. The programs are revenue neutral. They're designed to pay for themselves so that taxpayer dollars are not being used to fund the program operations. And also, again, as I mentioned before, to meet carbon reduction goals for both governmental agencies, which are required to reduce carbon emissions under AB 32, and then also for business property owners under AB 1103, which requires business property or non-residential property owners to benchmark their energy efficiency at the time they sell a property so that prospective buyers can do apples to apples comparison. So there's a methodology on that benchmarking. So in order to be more competitive, they're going to want to have energy efficiency measures in place when they go to sell those properties. The benefits to the property owner is there's no upfront cost. The financing can include permitting, it can include engineering, all the things that are necessary to put that improvement in place. It increases property value, but under California Revenue and Taxation Code, it does not trigger a reassessment of the property, as is the case if you were to build an addition onto your home. And then, again, the property owner realizes that the reduction in energy costs. Increases comfort, and also, not just for homeowners, but for business occupancy. It helps with tenant retention because building spaces are more comfortable with proper lighting, not having drafty spaces, that type of thing. So for the non-residential, it increases the NOI, improves cash flow, and it makes improvements affordable even if you don't plan on having a long holding period. And the reason for that is the repayment stays on the property tax bill. So to stay with the theme of stories, we had a couple come in to sign their financing documents. He was dressed in a flight aviation suit. They lived in Placer County, but he was in the military at one of our local air bases. His wife came in and they had 2 small children and they were signing their papers. And she was so excited because she said, we never would have done this because we know he will get transferred. And we were able to afford this and reduce our energy bills and increase the comfort of our home when we otherwise would not have. So here is an example of the RV park in Auburn. If you travel out Highway 49 across from the Sutter Hospital, you'll see this very large solar array. It was a $473,000 installation. It's a RV park that a lot of snowbirds come down from the northern states and stay for the winter. It has a lodge, it has a swimming pool, and the property owner had done many efficiency upgrades to the property. He had separately metered all of the individual spaces because before the daily rate just included the electricity and did not have an effect on behavior, but by individually metering and then being able to bill based on usage, that had an effect on behavior. And so the total project cost $473,000, and then after federal tax credits, performance-based incentives, depreciation, the net cost before the utility savings was $103,000, and then the annual utility savings are estimated to be over $33,000. So the payback period then was down to less than 4 years. So you can see on non-residential property that gets to take advantage of some of the performance-based incentives and depreciation, how this can be such a useful tool to generate savings and increase property value as well. And the federal tax credits are available to residential property owners as well, depending upon what their federal tax circumstances are. Benefits to investors. These programs are designed to ultimately be public-private partnerships, and it's a very secure investment because it is secured by a lien on the property. It can help investors meet social responsibility goals, and there is also limited recourse on the part of the public agency issuing the bonds that finance this. And in fact, a new program started just in June in the state of California through the state treasurer's office and the governor. They put together this program. The acronym is CATBA. I'll take a stab at remembering it. California Alternative Energy and Transportation Finance Authority. And they have put up $10 million so that in the case of a lender, like a mortgage lender, if they had to repossess a property and take ownership of it, they have to maintain that property. They have to pay the property tax during their holding period before they turn it over. If they have to pay the property tax bill, then that additional amount that was put on there to repay the PACE lien, they can make a claim to this fund in order to be made whole. So it's designed to protect the mortgage holders, but it also turns out that it's a credit enhancement as well to the investor.
Could I ask you to wrap that up?
Yep.
Good.
Just really quickly, as of the end of September, we had financed almost $14 million in projects in Placer County. This gives, I went the wrong way. Why is this going backwards? It won't go anymore.
Let's just maybe do it from
Oh,
here.
this gives you an idea of overall, this is the last slide. This gives you an overall idea of both the residential and the non-residential components of the program. So we've received over 837 applications. We've been able to finance in the last year about just over 500, and we have dispersed almost $14 million in the last year. So again, that's an investment in the local economy and with a high multiplier effect. So.
Thank you. So my name's Alyssa, and I work for Patagonia. And Patagonia is a outdoor apparel company. We're about $650 million a year in revenue, which sounds really large, but in the whole scheme of apparel companies and the competitors that we have out there, we're actually quite small. We are a privately held company, which makes us particularly nimble when it comes to being an environmental and socially minded organization. So I sort of give that disclaimer in the beginning because the fact that we're privately held and owned by a family, their last name is Chenard, and Yvonne Chenard is the founder, and they're quite committed to environmental responsibility, and they always have been, and that's really a big part of the history of the company and the company's story. And everyone's sort of been talking a lot about stories the last couple days, and Patagonia is a company that really likes to tell stories as well, and a big part of our corporate culture and the foundation that the company has been built on is really around an environmental story. And the company started out with Yvonne Chenard making climbing equipment because he was a climber and he felt the equipment wasn't quite good enough and he could do it better. So he started selling it to his friends and then it kind of caught on and more people were purchasing his product, and soon he was sort of the largest seller of climbing equipment out there, and he was making equipment that could be reused. So basically you could hammer these pitons in the rock and then pull them out and use them again on your route. So in a lot of ways it was a more environmental product than the ones that were being hammered in and left in the rock and just needing more and more equipment. But quickly he realized that the equipment he was producing was scarring the rock and scarring these very beautiful places that he sort of lived to climb. And he made the very first big business switch in the history of Patagonia and switched from creating pitons to chocks, which was a more environmentally friendly piece of equipment for climbing. And that sort of huge switch and big business change just led to future changes, and that has really become a part of the culture of Patagonia. So it's a little bit of the history, and right now, well, our headquarters is in Ventura, California, which is about an hour north of LA, but then we have our distribution center up here in Reno, so we are very much connected to this region, and it always feels like a very different culture when I come up here to our DC. It's very laid back, and the ethos, the environmental ethos is very, very strong there, and sometimes I actually feel like it's a bit stronger than it is even in Ventura at our headquarters. The building there is a LEED certified distribution warehouse, and it has made the space extremely energy efficient, water efficient. There's no light pollution. We have pervious pavement around the property to allow for runoff to percolate into the soil. And it's really an amazing space. If you guys ever want a tour, let me know and I can get you guys through there. And then our Ventura headquarters as well. We've installed solar there that powers about 14% of our total energy use at the campus. We've implemented stormwater projects and have EV charging stations. The Tesla ones sound like a very nice thing. Not sure if that would apply to us, but it sounded pretty good. And then really, our environmental practices, it goes much deeper than even just our facilities, and we really look a lot at our products and what we make and what the environmental impacts are of doing business. And it's actually quite significant. The apparel industry is a very dirty industry when it comes to environmental impact as well as social impact. And we all know the stories of Nike and Gap and just poor labor practices. So we have a very strong social and environmental department at Patagonia that's really focused on looking at our supply chain and trying to see those really hot spots where there's a lot of risk in what we do, and then implementing programs to improve upon our own business in those areas. So that's the department that I work in. My title is Manager of Product Responsibility. So I'm really looking at the impacts of products from the origin of the fiber, if it's a cotton fiber and grown on a farm in Texas, or whether it's wool coming from Argentina. We're really looking at all the steps in the supply chain, where we're getting our materials, how they're being made, how they're being dyed and finished, who is dyeing and finishing them, who is sewing them, and then, you know, making sure that it's a quality product. We want the customers to get a product that is going to last them for a very long time, that's going to function for the function it was designed to do. So it's got to be its raincoat, it's got to be keeping them dry for more than 3 wearings. Like the jacket has to work, otherwise it's waste, and we definitely recognize that. And our mission statement is sort of three parts: to build the best product, to cause no unnecessary harm, and to use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. And so that first piece, build the best product, we really want people to wear what we make, and we want to make it timeless so people can buy a jacket and have it 20 years later and it still doesn't necessarily look like it's out of style. We may have done that a few times. There are a few purple and teal products out there that could probably go away. But we do our very best to build something that's going to last and then also not look outdated.
Teal is never outdated.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. And then cause no unnecessary harm. That's really where my department comes into play. And then the last piece is use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. And I think that is the part that really applies to this panel. And working on policy and working in collaborative spaces with other apparel industries or other companies on environmental practices. And there are so many things that we have learned through trial and error that we really feel is important to share. Like, none of the environmental initiatives that we've done, we feel is proprietary. We want to share that inspiration, we want to share that experience, and we want other businesses to implement similar things that apply to their businesses. And we really feel that that's an important piece of driving large-scale change. And so we work really hard at our communication on that and being involved outside of our own supply chain and outside of our own company. And I think I probably will just leave it at that. One last piece is that we do have this very important piece of our business, which is 1% for the planet. So we do give 1% of all sales to environmental organizations. So I know several organizations here have benefited from that program of ours, and so we're up to about $6.5 million a year that we give away to environmental groups, and we give it away in small chunks of money, so anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, and we give it to really on-the-ground, grassroots environmental organizations. So if your group is out there and you have a cause and need some funding, we have this wonderful grants program, and you can go to our website and find out how to apply for those grants. So, thank you.
All right, can we fire up the video?
Yeah, let's get it going.
Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm Don Whitaker, and hey, a great group here. I moved up to the foothills and retired for the quality of life issues. What a beautiful area we have. And then I flunked retirement. Never got that good at golf. My wife said, you got to get out of the house. You know, we're not going to make it to 51 years, which we just made it. But, so I started another little company. I wanted to have fun was our #1 priority. I wanted to have a great team of employees, reward them well, and be socially conscious, be part of our community. So in building our facility, here we go. Yeah, we first I thought you have to be financially solvent in order to have a manufacturing business. So we started, well, let's do a solar system. So I did a 440,000 watt solar system. We're the largest commercial installation in the United States when we did it in 1998. And it was 50% funded by PG&E in the state of California. So when I finished it, they wrote me a check for $1.8 million. And then with state tax credits, federal tax credit, it was amortized in 42 months. So now we have extra power, so I put in a well and did some nice landscape. We're in PCWA water for the facility, but all the landscaping and the koi ponds and everything is all provided by a well, which is putting out 110 gallons per minute. And then we have a daycare center for all the workers' children, something that I think more businesses should do. You know, to have the kids there and the mothers there, and they take their break and they breastfeed the little ones, and we've had cribs there, and then we have a swim spa for mostly the kids and a playground. We put in a half-mile par exercise course where the employees exercise, and deeded 4 acres to the county of environmental heritage oak easements throughout these par exercise courses. We bring schools in, we'll charter buses, we'll all pay for the buses and bring classes in. We do 1 or 2 a month, and they come through, and we're kind of electronic geeks. I'm a machinist, I don't know anything about electronics. But when I retired, I wanted to do something new, so I started an electronics company. I think the key is hiring good people and treating them right. Be fair to them. We have 100% paid medical and dental, do 25% profit sharing on top of their regular salaries, 401ks. It's a nice place to work. So, but the whole thing, you got to plan it right so you have the finances to do all that. We take cruises with our employees and their significant others.
You're lying now.
No, we've been there. Janine can verify it. So can Dave down there. Yeah, but
Are there any vacancies?
we are always hiring. Not really, but the employees never leave. You know, they never leave, and you know they've never retired. Well, of course, I'm 72, right? So, and I'm employees in their 60s.
That's nuts. Really good.
72? Well, like that. He's 72 and having fun, no
And learning
plans
new
to retire.
things every day.
I'm in at work at 6 a.m. every day, and generally, I'm not the first one into work. The other employees are there, and they don't start until 7:30. And some of them come in like we have this bird sanctuary that we just did for fun, and now we have over 250 exotic birds from all over the world. And my guy in charge of QC, he loves birds, so he manages all that. Then I have another employee that's in charge of all the koi ponds for fun. So, you know, we do tours of that, and just trying to create a fun environment, and then be financially solvent at the same time. That's critical, because you can't do all these fun things. And then I've got a little Steve Jobs story too. We're in on stories. We developed capacitive touch, and we introduced that for kiosk machines, point-of-sale machines, information terminals, Brunswick bowling centers, AMF. We developed the automatic scorekeeping and the gambling machines. In 1984, we introduced touch into the gambling. And that's surface capacitive, and a better system is projected capacitive. And I worked on that for 12 years, was really close, and Steve Jobs saw us at a show, and I went down and met with him in Silicon Valley and his engineers. He wanted to use it for his new iPhone, but high pressure. He's not a fun guy. So my number one priority is fun, right? And so I partnered with some friends. He really wanted, so partnered with friends, and I leave Wednesday. They're doing all the iPhone, the iPads, and about 85% of the world market share for projected capacitive for all the smart devices. 44,000 employees in Shanghai, China. That would have been nice to do in Auburn, but Apple didn't want to see it that way. So, but just having fun. Great little company. Love the Sierras. We try to be a great steward and give back to the community. We do a lot of community events at our place, and you know, in electronics, it's always innovative. Right now, during the recession, you constantly transform your manufacturing business. You know, it's always changing. We're in a $1 trillion a year industry making video monitors, and yet everything was invented in the United States, and we're the only manufacturer left. It's really all in China. You can't buy a television set, computer monitor, your cell phone, any of the display devices made in the United States anymore. So we're the only one left, The only issue is everyone during the recession was buying on price. They didn't care about quality or 6-year warranty. So my market all of a sudden was greatly reduced. So now I refocused the business plan, focused on the replacement market. So we have now 640 different products with 2-day standard lead time for replacement. So if you have a kiosk and the display goes out, it's down, but the Chinese don't want to support it because they want the large orders for 2,000, 3,000 at a time, fill a container. We take orders for 1 and 2. We're selling to over 38 countries around the world and keeping things going. Thank you.
Sonics.com for employment applications. So just to dive into questions, but I want to extract a couple really important points that came out. And one is there is this notion that being a sustainable business is very expensive and that profit is mutually exclusive from environmental responsibility or social responsibility. I think it's pretty clear here that is not necessarily the case. The other point is both of these companies are private. How many in the room have worked for Fortune 500, large, 1,000? I know you have. Yeah. So how nimble are those big companies? How fast can change happen? Does it very right? It's like turning the Titanic. Because we're in the Sierra, these are the types of businesses that work so well in our community because it's the right size, right? They can make decisions that are, definitely beneficial to the community. So it's really inspiring. Anyway, but let's start with Alyssa. What do you see as the biggest challenge or pushback in adopting sustainable business practices? In Patagonia, because Patagonia has really been one of the pioneers, and I know there's been some pushback because there's always that challenge, even though you're not a publicly traded company accountable to shareholders, you still have to show an economic profit. So where do you see pushback?
That is a great question. And our owners, he's the first one to say he's not out to be a martyr. He's not out to not make money. It's important for Patagonia to be a successful business in order to continue to inspire other businesses to try and look at how they can do things differently. But we are a business that operates very similar to all other businesses in that profit has to happen. There are a lot of forces pulling on every decision, and this sort of triple bottom line concept. At Patagonia, we have a fourfold approach. So we're looking at social, environmental, quality, and business. And all of those things sometimes can pull in the same direction, and sometimes they pull in completely opposite directions. And the price point often is a very challenging thing to override. So we're very similar to other businesses in that case. But I will say that privately held element and our owners being very informed and very passionate, very committed to ensuring that Patagonia really is this responsible company, they will sometimes make these directives and just say, hey, let's do it. It's going to cost a little more, but we're going to do that anyways. And so that can happen in our business. And ultimately, that decision ends up leading to success. And Yvonne has several times said every time he makes a decision for the right reason, for the right environmental reason, the right social reason, he ends up making more money, which is a very sort of interesting concept, but it is very true. We did incredibly well in the economic downturn in 2008. We have this sort of consistent sort of brand reputation, and so I think people were sort of knew we were a reliable company with reliable products and stuck with us. But yeah, that price point can be probably our major challenge.
Yeah, so what I'm struck by is Don's company is both a beneficiary and maybe also the victim of certain public policies. Same thing with your company, I think. So, the work we do looks at the impact of policies and regulations on the success of environmentally responsible companies in particular. So I wondered, Don, if you could reflect on how maybe trade policies, which you may remain unknowing about, but you probably have some sense of how they've impacted your business, because policymakers in Washington, D.C. in particular, have really invested in a sort of an export strategy and have not paid maybe as much attention to domestic manufacturing as they might, which has been a conscious choice in some ways. So I wonder if you have a thought about that.
Certainly, and another side, I wanted to play politics, right? So I thought, well, if we're going to be a big exporter and importer of video monitors and televisions and electronics, why don't I set up a foreign trade zone? They said, what? You want to do a foreign trade zone in Auburn? I said, well, yeah, 21 acres we have. So I went to the politicians in Washington, D.C. Feinstein and Boxer supported us. Our legislatures got them all to support us. Then with all those recommendations in hand, you go to the Department of Commerce, and they're all attorneys and they speak legalese, so now I had to hire attorneys to talk to them. And we drew up the papers, and then you go on the public record for 30 days, and then we were a foreign trade zone. And what that means, we're regulated by U.S. Customs, so we don't pay any duties. We don't pay any harbor maintenance fees. We're our own customs broker. So it's very easy to bring things in duty-free, and when I did it, it was saving over $1 million per year in duties, and that equates to about $40 per monitor, and our profit on the monitor is $60, right? So I'd have to give up, $40 of the $60. I'd only be left with $20 gross profit to handle, and it doesn't pencil out. And still I had to compete with the Chinese on price. And this was a case, our government in their infinite wisdom had a process called inverse duties. So you pay duties on all the components you bring in, up to 25% duties, but the finished product, the television set or video monitor, is zero duties. So, and no one had ever done this in the United States. So I said, well, if I get a foreign trade zone, I'm going to bring all these parts in duty-free. Then I'm going to make it into a video monitor or television set or kiosk, and I'm going to ship it out. I'm going to change the duty classification, and I won't have to pay any duties. The customs said, you're going to do what? He said, nobody's ever done that. I said, well, it looks legal to me. So my attorney says it's legal, so now we are one. So, and that allows us to compete with the Chinese, also get very expedited deliveries. If there's a harbor strike, we're the first ones off with Homeland Security. Since Customs does on-site inspections, they never pull our containers to have Homeland Security x-ray and open them up. That can delay a week and you have to pay for it, so it makes us more competitive.
So that's a great case in point of knowing how the policy process works. Let me ask a question, Alyssa. Some of the core issues you're concerned with, I understand from you and others in the company, are water quality, climate change, land preservation, all of which are really core to the success of your business, and which is what your customers. They're out in nature, they care about the environment. So how do you choose to get involved in policies, and briefly, how do you actually engage as a company?
So Patagonia has long, evaluated our own business, but we've also been active community members around specific environmental issues. And we would sort of pick these issues that we would align a environmental campaign around, and that campaign would be promoted through our emails, our website, our retail stores, and we would often, pick an issue that not anyone else was really talking about, what we felt was very important. And more recently, we've been looking at issues that are actually linked to our own impact as a business. So really, it's what we want to focus on, and then who else is working on it, and is the timing right? And a lot of our interaction with your organization has been around fracking, and we've just been very active and vocal in the anti-fracking movement, and that spurred out of our water campaign. So we had it was called Our Common Waters. It was really focused on water quality, availability of water, And those were the two main elements of it. And so when it came to water quality, that was where the fracking issue came in. And that really sparked our involvement in policy around fracking and anti-fracking activism. So that seemed, I mean, we seem to march to the beat of our own drum, to be honest. Like, we like to do what we like to do and we like to do it, but I feel like there are so many activists out there that no matter what issue we're focused on, we end up finding great partners and really try and take it to the very furthest level we can and drive policy change around those issues.
This is so I think you can see that the area of sustainable business is ripe for innovation when a leader in the industry can say, we do whatever we want to do, right? There's another theme that I'm seeing come through on this panel, and that's in quality, right? We have quality in product. We have quality with the way you treat your employees and the types of employees, and we have quality in programs. So I want to direct this question to Janine. In particular with the PACE program. You mentioned investor participation. Can you tell us more about that?
Make sure my mic is on. One of the things, the way that we finance this program is through the county treasury. The county, thank you.
The county treasury serves, and this is true of every county, all 58 counties in the state of California. The county treasury serves as the bank, not just for the county, but for all the schools in the county and many special districts in the county. In Placer County, we have about $1 billion on deposit in the county treasury, which is predominantly tax revenues of various types that are revenues to all of those different depositors. The schools are our depositors. The county is a depositor, fire districts are depositors. And so we invest that money. It's predominantly invested in Wall Street. And so what we have done is we have created a local investment and invested our money. I like it better when we take Wall Street, when rather than they take our money and make money off of it, we can take our own money and we make money off it. So we're really leveraging property tax dollars. At the end of the day, there's only so much capacity in the county treasury, even though we have $1 billion. Those are predominantly operating funds, so those monies have to be available for withdrawal. And so eventually what the model is to be able to prove the model by making the investment through the treasury and then finding a capital partner who will then take out that financing so that we can keep going into perpetuity.
Yeah, what did Glenda say? Why are we letting Wall Street run our country? So, yeah, this is a great example of bringing investment back into the community. Do you have a follow-up policy?
Yeah, I just wanted to make or offer a thought. When we think about public policy, it relates to creating market signals and creating a sense of certainty. Those of you who run businesses or have been in business know that while you're risk takers, you also want to get a sense of where the road's leading. And so policy does set forth those, there are markers on the road. How much risk can I take? Because this policy is either going to encourage my risk taking or it's going to put a damper on where I'm heading. So if we think of an issue like climate change, which affects all of us in every community in the country, we are hearing a lot of arguments from certain industries that it's too expensive to address and that will be too disruptive to the economy. Then there are many others in all kinds of manufacturing sectors in particular who see this as a unique opportunity to transform their business. They're offering a whole set of new products and solutions. So it's always interesting to look at the public policy debate and think about who will have an innovative technological or product solution, because the rules that get written will encourage that kind of innovation. And then clearly certain technologies and approaches to energy production under a carbon tax, for instance, become somewhat outdated and less competitive. So the point of the story is that I go back to my premises that it's really important for businesses to participate because they get to really shape what those policies and regulations are, which then, in essence, really create new opportunity for innovative products and processes.
Yeah, just building on that, businesses to participate not just in policy, but in the way we think of what is a successful business and what are our metrics. So typically we look at what is Wall Street, it's earnings per share, and that's pretty much how, and share price, how every CEO in America is measured. But there is a whole new movement to add different metrics around sustainable business. And I'd really like to hear from both Dawn and Alyssa on that, is what other, sort of non-traditional metrics do you look at personally besides fun? We know that, okay. I think all companies should have that. And then Alyssa, maybe you could talk a little bit about B Corp, of course. Great, thanks.
All right. Yeah, I think Melissa hit on it too. Being a private corporation gives you a whole lot of latitude. We do what we want to do too. And we partner with the city and the county governments, which have been wonderful. And I encourage our employees to be part of local activities. We support local politicians. Washington, not so much. They might be beyond hope, but local politics is certainly within our control. And we can influence what happens to businesses in the Auburn and Placer County region, and really make a difference and care, and so can our employees. And just caring, being a part of the community.
So will you guys raise your hand? Who's familiar with what a B Corp is? Okay, so a lot of people have heard of it. Just for a brief overview, there's an organization, it's a nonprofit group called B Lab. And I actually don't know what year they started, but they have started this movement around the idea of benefit corporations. So corporations that bring environmental and social benefit through their business. And their mission is sort of twofold. One is they're incorporating businesses to be B Corps, and that's a certification program that you go through, and you do pay a fee to B Lab, and then you are a certified B Corp. So you have this third-party certification that addresses your social programs, your environmental programs, your community programs, and then your overall business governance. But the second part of their organization is to implement new legislation in state governments to have the ability for companies to be incorporated as a benefit corporation. So it means changing your corporate bylaws to incorporate environmental and social attributes to your company. And the idea around this is that if you have a privately held business that is sold at some point, the value system that the private company up until its selling point was built upon doesn't just go away. And that triple bottom line approach really stays in the business through a shift in ownership. And so Patagonia is a B Corp, and we became a B Corp the very end of 2011. And that happened right as the state of California added the legislation to the state. So we were the first ones in line to become a benefit corporation through the state. So there's sort of two different designations, and we have both of them. And we just went through the recertification process again to be a B Corp through B Lab, and we passed, which was great. But it really keeps companies accountable to these environmental and social responsibility attributes that they feel are important. But when I say they, I'm referring to B Lab, but they've really pulled together all these questions and expectations that really, I think, reflect a solid approach to business. And I think it's really provided us with a lot of guidance on what we do well and where we have room for improvement and other elements that may never really apply to our business. But up until now, it's really provided us a good sort of path to know how to continue to improve our practices. And there are over 1,000 B Corps now across the world. And I can't remember how many states, but 26 states, and they're in 35 countries. And it's an incredible movement. We're not the largest anymore. We're one of the largest companies, but Ben & Jerry's is in it, and they're a public company. So it's really broadening and really becoming a strong movement. So I think it just shows that it's not a niche anymore. People, the desire to have responsible corporations out there is becoming broader, and more companies are finding value in it. And I think it's amazing, actually. I'm completely impressed with how it's grown since we became one, and I'm looking forward to see what happens. I mean, who knows? Hopefully, most states will have that legislation in no time.
Let me just add something to that, and then it would be great to open it up. Yeah. So the American Sustainable Business Council worked with B-Lab from the outset. They're one of our original partners to push, as Alyssa was describing, on the enactment of this legislation in state legislatures. And so this is essentially, as she described, a new legal classification. So rather than being an S Corp or a C Corp, this is a form of an LLC, a limited liability corporation. And so you can incorporate now, as she said, in 26 states in the country. And states like not only California and Colorado, but places like North Carolina and Ohio. So not only the bellwether states, but more middle of the road and some conservative places. And what's been really interesting is legislators have looked at this idea and said, you know, this is a great way to spur innovation. This will probably attract capital and investors who want to do business in our state because they like the quality of life, they like the innovative spirit of these business people. And in Utah, they passed the legislature, I think 86-0, right? And Utah is not necessarily known as a blue state. So it's really remarkable how this idea about responsible business as a means of creating innovation in the economy has caught on. Should we take some questions? Anyone have a question they'd like to ask or comment?
Sure. I'm curious of your membership of the council, how it breaks down between private and public companies, and then the role you see of the boards of those public companies, if you do have them, how they might be different.
We have only privately held companies today, not on purpose. We've talked to many public companies, and they basically say the same thing, which is they acknowledge, they may agree with 80%, 90% of what we stand for, but the 10% that they don't is enough of a risk they view for their shareholders that they're not willing to move on it. And one of the issues that we often run into with publicly traded companies is the issue of tax inversion. You may have been hearing a lot about this, of companies, Walgreens and Pfizer will do this in 2 weeks. They will, for tax benefit reasons, move their corporate headquarters supposedly offshore, and they'll go to Belgium or they'll go to Costa Rica. They'll go someplace where it's a lot less expensive for them to do business, and they'll end up paying less tax in the United States, while continuing to take advantage of all the benefits of being a company here in the United States. So we feel that's fundamentally unfair for small business in particular, but I won't get on that too much, that soapbox. So we're very interested in having publicly traded companies belong to the American Sustainable Business Council. And I think with the boards of directors of publicly traded companies, they have a different set of pressures. So they don't have as much fun as Don's having. And they don't have as much leeway as Alyssa and her colleagues at Patagonia. They unfortunately are really driven by a very narrow set of metrics, which is all about what their share price is doing. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's paramount importance. And the most innovative companies, in my view, often have some of the greatest internal contradictions. So some of the most impressive sustainability programs by publicly traded companies in this country are the same companies that are fighting against adoption of a carbon tax, fighting against investment in mass transportation, fighting against a higher minimum wage. So, that is a complex set of issues that the boards of directors of those publicly traded companies have to face, but we feel that history is right here to my left and my right. The future. This is the future of business, and we think this is a more profitable way to operate. So hopefully that answered your question.
Other questions? Yes.
As a chamber of commerce or a city or a county, what could we do to support businesses like Patagonia and environmentally and socially responsible companies to attract them? What types of non-traditional recipes, as you say, could we implement on a governmental standpoint or in a general plan or something to assist or attract that type of
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll offer a few quick thoughts. One is your procurement policies can be oriented around rewarding, let's call them responsible or civically minded companies. So you could decide to buy more of your product on a city basis or county basis from locally sourced vendors. You could give preferential treatment for companies that hired locally. You could encourage the procurement of greener, more sustainable, environmentally preferable products. So procurement is really a lever that municipalities have to use. And I think, you as a city council person, as a county commissioner, as a state legislature, it's also within your power to think about what kinds of businesses do you want to attract, and what are the agreements that you're reaching. So we heard in the previous session about Tesla, okay? So the state of Nevada, I think, offered Tesla $1.8 billion or $1.4 billion. It was a lot of money. It's a lot of money. The question from a taxpayer's perspective is that a prudent investment? It might be. It might not be. So, we encourage municipal leaders to really think hard about using the public's money for these kinds of investments and these kinds of subsidies. And is this the same type of support that would be given to a small business? Probably not, okay? So I think Tesla's got a great product, but I'm somewhat concerned that they were pushing the bidding price in the 4 or 5 states they were looking, and they pushed it up. And Nevada bid, and it's good. It's now there. But the state of California also had an infrastructure, and that was the home of Tesla. So, how public money gets spent is, I think, should be a great, great concern to small businesses in particular.
Yeah, I'm just going to add, another thing is progressive support of programs like PACE, like Placer County's doing, foreign trade zones. And then I'm a huge advocate of public-private partnerships, which some people are going to fight till the day they die because it's like mixing religion and education sort of thing. But you can leverage public money for private benefit, and there's so much power in that. And there's also a culture that comes from the private sector that I think, and no disrespect to any public officials in the room, that a lot of government agencies could really benefit from. So that was meant in the best way possible.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll just add one other thing. I mean, this is my business, so I'm in politics, so I'll say that. But we hear a lot about what's going on in Texas, right? Texas has the highest job growth rate in the country, right? Okay, that's what we hear statistically. We also know that Texas has the fastest growing number of below minimum wage or at minimum wage jobs, okay? So, you might want to ask whether that is a good public policy and whether that is successful, or, is another state where living wage jobs are the norm, is that smarter public policy? Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one challenge that we often have is we own some property. The property they were based on in Ventura, and just the process of making changes to that, adding buildings or any sort of solar, any sort of construction, and the permitting process is quite long and difficult sometimes. So assistance with those types of processes to keep things moving and stay supportive. And then just to say, like, our city of Ventura is quite supportive in terms of our community efforts to clean up parks and the beach and the river bottom. And so that's something too, just to provide manpower and support, because they have the tools needed to do those cleanups and the ability to make them very effective. So that type of assistance goes a really long ways with a company like ours. We're always so very appreciative.
Just, I'd like to invite you to come to Auburn. It's an expedited permitting process. We get most of our permits in 1 or 2 months. Never had issue with them. Janine offers financing, and some of it's working with the county government, in the city to show them you're going to follow through and what you say you will. And once you do that, you become a part of the community. We get less than 1 month generally approval on permits. We just finished in process of finishing a structure. It's a party house called the Mandapa. It's out on the Koi Pond, and this is a place. This is pretty wild. We had 4 carvers in Nepal carving teak for over a year and a half, and we've reproduced artwork going back 2,000 and 3,000 years to Hindus and Buddhists, and we put up this. It's a little like a temple, but it's not. It's a mandapa, which is a party house, and then generally it's next to a Buddhist temple. So it's a place you can drink wine, and so I'm holding my engineering meetings down there where we can have a little beer or wine. We have a cooler down there. We're right over the top of the Koi Pond, so we need you in Auburn.
Yes, we do. Actually, we need Patagonia in Auburn.
Well, I think we need Don in Washington.
It's not an honorable profession. Fortunately.
We're getting, our time is just about up. We have any other burning questions out there? Yes, oh, good. Yes, we'll take here and then Tony.
Not so much a burning question, but another acknowledgement it caused me to think, as Don was speaking, of how innovative working with Janine is as this county's treasurer. She allowed our special district, we're an independent special district, Placer County Water Agency, and yet our 50-year license on our relicensing was coming up. I don't know if you know this, it takes about $50 million to be able to do the environmental impact report, do studies, and then prepare to mitigate. So a line of credit, what I needed was about $100 million. If I had worked with PG&E or San Diego or Edison or any other company who has the capacity, I would have had to sell the soul of our organization to their terms and conditions. My board was not willing to do that. We approached Janine with a lot of due diligence back in 2004 and 2005. And with our Board of Supervisors and my Board of Directors, we created the Middle Fork Project Finance Authority. The bottom line is, it's like a credit union line of credit. She advanced us a line of credit, very good terms and conditions. The money will be coming back very soon as we do other things. Now that we are independent of our 50-year power contract, my agency under my board and with the supervisors, we're finding ways to actually sell power, make more revenue than what PG&E had been doing in its more conservative approach. And yet I think we're very good stewards, and I have to point out, what Janine has given us that capability, as I keep looking up to the peak innovations, to reach a new reality that had never been thought of before. And I'm not aware among my peers in the hydroelectric and water resources in the West where anyone else has ever done this before. Most have to end up giving up, I will call it for heart and soul, when you borrow money to do that, and it's kept us really independent. Janine, I want to point that out, because I think you deserve a lot of credit. You've always been.
Thank you for sharing, and that's exactly what I meant about innovation in government, and just saying, why are we doing the things we're doing, and is there a better way to do it? So that's fantastic. I'd love to hear it.
I'm going to go back to something you said. It's because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We believe that we saved, when we looked at the market, about $35 million. And so a lot of local people went to work on all of those studies. We saved $35 million for the taxpayers, and it stayed in our community. Whereas if we would have had a financing partnership, somebody else would have made those interest earnings, because the revenues on the hydropower project go to repay the bond with interest. That interest comes back into the treasury. What ends up happening is the agency gets a lower rate of interest than they would in the market, but the investors in the treasury, the school districts, the fire districts, get a higher rate of return than if we went to Wall Street. So we kind of slice it, on the diagonal there, if you will. And that means that those agencies are able to provide services that the taxpayers didn't have to pay for.
Right.
It came out of the electrical revenues. And so the same thing on the PACE bonds. So that's what we're looking at doing, is leveraging the tax dollars locally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, I love it. And Tony, one more. Yeah.
Tony Lashbrook, Town Manager of Truckee. Just on the B Corp, it's a very interesting concept. I was just doing a little research. Looks almost like a LEED certification for business, kind of have a triple bottom line. The question, which is important, we're fortunate enough to be actually looking to partner with private business. We have a pot of money to grow our economy. Is the B Corp pervasive enough for that to be a criteria in looking at partnering with small business in the Sierra? Or is that so cutting edge that we're 5 or 10 years from now?
That's a great question, and I don't know the population up here and what the B Corp status is, but it is growing, and Patagonia recently started this 20 million and change fund where we are going to be funding new businesses, and from our perspective, that's something that we're really looking at, is the business the B Corp, and that's it's not an official criteria, but it is an element of that, so that's starting to be how we're thinking, but it might take a couple years for the region. Do you have a sense?
I would say you'd be on the cutting edge, and that's a good place to be. You know, maybe a little bit on the bleeding edge too, but it's safe enough. There's enough, support for this nationally, and in California, the governor actually signed 2 bills. He signed the B Corp bill, and then he signed a single-purpose corporation bill, which there was an argument in the state legislature as to whether you had to have a specific benefit, purpose, which benefit corporation says you have to have a general set of public benefits. And then there were people who said, no, you should be specific and just have one benefit. So in California, you're unique because you have both pieces of legislation. It's, I think, probably the only state that has that. So long story short, here in Truckee, you'd be, setting some precedent, which I think would really catch fire across the country.
Plastic bag bans, B Corps, it's all good. I don't want to put Jenny on the spot, but Jenny Cassin's in the room, who's quite an expert on this. Did you want to add a B Corp, right?
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything?
So the other legislation is actually the flexible purpose corp.
Thank you.
So yeah, they're both designed to allow businesses to consider things other than just making their investors rich, but to consider other benefits to their community. So yeah, I'd say, encouraging either one would be a good idea.
And I think it could be a progressive goal type of thing, Tony. So you say, X number by 2015, X percentage by 2020 type of thing, but it's definitely valid.
Also, it's free to take the assessment.
Yeah.
So you could just have people who apply to partner with you take the assessment and see how they do.
Right. Actually, a really good point is I don't think you want to put any kind of economic burden on somebody you're attracting. That's a really big point. But taking a free assessment is totally worthwhile. And then having them set goals.
An issue or a goal, think about how you get there. And don't just go in the same rut, in the same track. Think, where am I today? Or where are we today? Where do we need to get? And start thinking how you get there. And then, much like Dawn again gave the example, call in your legal help and have them be the enablers. So often we look at them as the disablers, and they can help us get through that bureaucratic and legal technical process to get where you need to go. So don't just look at the existing pathways, look for different ways, or look for altering the current pathways. And I just also want to take a second to thank Dave for your kind comments.
I completely agree with what you just said, and I think that's the thing, is to live and examine life and be introspective and see where you can find improvements in your own practices, in your own business. And a few years back, we had a trainer come to teach us all how to be public speakers, and they're like, you need to have a point when you're speaking. What is the point of your presentation? And doing a lot of speaking, I thought really hard about that. I'm like, what is my point? And my point is, like, your business is not the same as the business that I work for, but your business does have opportunities for improvement, opportunities to engage with the community, and just opportunities to provide benefit to your space. And so I think looking for those things and then acting upon them, and it might take years to implement stuff, but that's okay, we have time, we all want to be in business for a while. And then share your story. It's great to do wonderful environmental programs, but you gotta go out and tell people about them so that they're aware of them. It's not good enough just to do it in your bubble. It's really important to share the message in a way that people can understand. And then the last piece is just to have hope. Every once in a while I'm like, gosh, are things changing? Are people's expectations shifting? And in the 10 years that I've been at Patagonia and sort of 12 years that I've been in this environmental space, I think things have changed a lot, actually. The conversation, the fact that all of you are in the room and caring about this, sometimes it feels incremental, but when you look back 10 years, it's been incredible. So I think just keeping that hope, and 10 years from now, who knows what we'll be talking about.
So I agree with all that, and what Janine said as well. And so a few thoughts. One, the business culture is changing in this country as it is around the world. And that is that it's radical and it's extremely significant. And I think it was Paul Hawken who said, maybe 25 years ago, that there's no force, more powerful than business in order to transform the economy and society. And I believe that's true. So what is incredibly encouraging is we have thousands and thousands of very responsible, highly successful companies in this country that are demonstrating with their products and their practices that they believe in a sustainable economy. Second point is that's not enough. So now those companies we want, that's what our mission is, to engage those companies in the policy process. Because otherwise, the rules of the economy get written by other people who don't share Patagonia's values necessarily. So, and third is that policymakers, in my experience, generally don't hear from this constituency. They don't hear from progressive businesses. Who they hear from generally are people who have a different point of view, who are wedded to maybe an older paradigm of doing business. And it's not necessarily for lack of interest that the policymakers don't know, but they're just not exposed to these ideas. So believe me, when you show up at the city, at the county, at the state, at the federal level, you are really educating the policymakers about this transformation. And they need to know it, and you are a great representative of that point of view.
Have fun. That's what it's about. And stick true to your core values. And when you do that, people want to be around you. Customers want to buy from you. Your employees want to be part of it. We've never had a salesman. We still don't. Never had a salesman. The product's always sold itself. It's all been word of mouth. And have fun. That's the most important thing I can learn.
I love you, Don Whitaker. Just a huge thank you to our panelists, and thank you for attending. And you heard it here. Business as usual is over.